Hi everybody, I'm Jess and it's time to do a wrap up of the books that I read and the things that I did in March. Now I think in January I read a couple of books and it was fine. My wrap up kind of had a little bit of content to it. February I need to watch it back because as far as I can tell Iron Gold was the only thing I read in February, and that was kind of more of a January read and it was just like finishing it up in February. In March I kind of only read 3 books, so for the past 2 months my reading has been very, very poor quantity. Like, I've just not been doing it at all. In the kind of beginning / mid-March I had an exam retake that I was really nervous for, and I was trying to force myself to revise by not reading. But I turned out just not doing any revision and not reading as well. I was fine, I passed, I'm done now, but you know, now I can focus a bit more on reading. I bought loads and loads and loads of books in March, but my passion for reading has kind of like gone out the window a bit at the moment. I need to gain it back and I will, but I do now have another exam coming up, kind of I think it's the 21st to 25th is my window of when I think the exam is, in April this month. So at the same time as I should be relaxing and trying to kind of get myself back into reading, I do need to be revising as well. So the first book that I read this month was Anna Day's The Fandom, and as you can see this is the art copy that I got in Yousk in July last year, which is pretty bad. I think I actually started reading this late December and it took me until sort of, I think the 7th of March is the day that I officially finished reading it. Now I started it and it was just like, I think the first 2 or 3 chapters, because I go to Comic Con myself, it was just very difficult for me to read through, and I think it was just a case of I could see a little bit of myself in it. Like I do very much have things that I fandom over as well, and kind of will go to Comic Con for, and it's an experience I know, but it was the interaction between the females that kind of put me off for a while. Majorly Alice. Alice was a character I just for a little while I was just like, oh my good God, I cannot stand like to read about this one. And it took me a little while to continue doing it, and then things started happening and it still took me a little while to get through because it was like, it was constantly telling you what would happen. The problem is with this is when you know what's, like, when this character knows what's going to happen in the book, nothing is surprising, and so you know every step, and it's kind of like, well, of course this was going to happen, you've been saying that it's going to happen for the past 3 chapters. I found the writing was kind of, it was mature yet not, it was childish, but then it would throw in a fair bit of swearing in there and it felt a bit jumbled. But I found that it was definitely, it was a fan fiction kind of book, really. It's the kind of book that you would read on a fan fiction site where you've gotten thrown into the place that you want to be most. I think the idea and the concept was there, but the characters were not really, for me, that interesting. There was nothing that special about them, which kind of was the point, but that made it really difficult to kind of delve into, and as I said, there weren't really any surprises because you always knew it was going. But it was definitely a very, very interesting and promising idea that was behind this book. So I think just maybe the writing style kind of, I might have enjoyed it a couple of years ago. The second book that I read this month, I started the day I finished The Fandom by Anna Day, and I finished, I think I read it in 4 days, and that is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and this is the first Holly Black book that I have ever read. I've had The Darkest Part of the Forest for absolutely years since it came out, and just like never gotten round to it because I loved kind of Sarah J Maas's books so much, and I was like, oh, but it's about fairies and stuff, and what if I don't like it and it's not the same. But I did read it, and this is a signed copy because I got it signed at the event, and as you can see I've got some kind of stars that I've sticking in there as well, because on the signing table there were like stars sprinkled out, and a couple of them stuck to my book as I took it away. I've actually just found a couple more as well, so I need to kind of embed them in these, and I thought it was quite cute. I've obviously got another copy of this which is signed from just the plain Waterstones copy, and then the Owlcray exclusive edition which is signed as well, which is all awesome because I really, really enjoyed this, and I was worried that this got overhyped for me to enjoy, but it wasn't in any regard. I did very much enjoy the writing style. There are kind of there are aspects of this, like small details, like the fact that she's missing a part of her finger, the main character in this, whose name has just completely evaded me. Jude, that's it. Jude is missing like the tip of one of her ring fingers, and like it's mentioned very vaguely, like kind of nonchalantly, and I'm like, oh my god, what if I don't find out what's happening here? And like luckily a couple of chapters later we do, and I was like, oh my god, I thought we were going to have to wait till like the third or second or whatever book to find out what's going on with this, but we didn't. It was great. The event for this in Piccadilly was really, really fascinating. Holly Black is an excellent speaker, really, really fascinating to listen to, very funny, and she will have a proper little chat to you, and I got a lovely photo with her, and I am definitely going to be going in and reading more of her books because I did enjoy this. It was the case that I could tell when the action was going to happen, but at the same time I couldn't tell what was going to happen. Like I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this person is gonna like this is gonna happen, but then something else would happen as well, and that was something that Holly actually mentioned at the event. It was that twists aren't twists anymore because in YA you expect there to be a twist, and so you have to do a twist and then you have to twist again. You have to do a double twist in order for anything to actually be surprising anymore. And she was right. That is exactly what happens, and I could see the very end, I could see that that was happening, but I didn't necessarily know that that was why it would happen, kind of thing. So like there are bare bones and pieces that I could kind of see where that was going to happen, but not necessarily the why or the how. And I very much enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be looking out for the second book because the cover on that is gorgeous. We got the sampler of it as well, and I read the sampler of it pretty much immediately after we left because that was part of the goodie bag. I do love the Rhys vibes that I get off of Cardan as well. I think that's really, really great, and I think he is a really interesting character, kind of a, like, you never know quite what he's going to do. It's always a bit of a surprise. It's going to be like, okay, is he going to turn around and be nice at this point, or is he just going to be the cruel prince as we know he is? Holly really uses her knowledge of kind of the mythology of fairies. Like, she specifically names the type of fairies, like the red caps and stuff like that we've got in here. It's very, very kind of, you can tell that she grew up and is fascinated by it because it is all used in here, whereas Sarah J Maas kind of, she allows her own stuff. Like in ACOTAR we saw a bit more of the different fairies, but only one or two of got kind of the water ones, not so much more as is used in this. And then of course Holly adapts it, and it all fits with what you imagine and kind of know about it. And I had no idea that Holly had written the Spiderwick Chronicles until a little while ago. I thought the Spiderwick Chronicles was a much, much, much older book and kind of had been adapted to use in everyday life, but you know, you can see that is a woman who knows her fairy, and I'm very excited to try and come and read the rest of her stuff. The Modern Fairy Tale series is a trilogy. Like Tithe is the first book, I think, and it's just out of print here in the UK, so I'm going to have to look into how to get hold of that, if I have to get it on Kindle or some such, until she comes over again. But yeah, I will definitely be on the lookout for her events and stuff happening again because she was really, really fascinating to listen to. So I listened to Scarlet by Marissa Meyer on Audible over the course of kind of February and March. It took me a little bit longer to kind of delve into than maybe Cinder did, because I actually didn't realise that each book was kind of introducing a new character, and it took me a shockingly long time to realise that Scarlet was going to be, you know, Red Riding Hood side of the kind of fantasy and folklore kind of mythology and all of that. It wasn't until kind of, I think, it wasn't even when his face turned wolf-like in the fight, it was when a wolf was howling in the distance that I realised, oh my god, it's Red Riding Hood, what an idiot, like how did you not see that? Again, the writing is good for Marissa Meyer. It's a little bit different to kind of judge the writing when you're listening to it, I think, as opposed to reading it like there on the page. The audiobook speaker was absolutely fine. Get used to her when you've kind of gone through two books with her, kind of 20 hours or so. I liked the introduction of the new characters. I think they're very interesting. However, I didn't really like the accent. I understand that they're from France, but of course, like, you don't actually have to put an accent on them when you're reading the audiobook, because I wouldn't use them in my head. It made it sound a bit funny, but I wish we'd seen a little bit more of Cinder. It was definitely a lot of Scarlet and Wolf, and not necessarily that didn't actually necessarily end up adding a lot. It was kind of, you know, it was all thrown in there. Thorn is an interesting character thrown into the mix. I wish we'd seen a bit more of Emperor Kai, because his side of the story is obviously fascinating. It's much bigger than the rest of it kind of all happening, and I think that more of an insight on that would have been much more interesting. But you know, it's very difficult to balance when you're introducing and yet trying to continue a story. I've just started Cress, and again I'm already finding that, you know, we've got more of Cress than the others just in the first couple of chapters. But it's a really interesting experience. I think it's definitely different listening to it as opposed to if I was reading it, but I am enjoying the series. I think they are good. Lots of people love this series, and I'm very, very late to the bandwagon, but I do think it's definitely a unique series and is progressing at a really, really nice rate. So that was the grand total of 3 books that I read during March. I'm trying to force myself to read a little bit more and a little bit not quicker. My kind of speed of reading is very, very slow, but try and push myself to kind of finish the books that I've started, read the books that I know I'm looking forward to reading, and therefore I'll pick myself up and start reading things again. Hopefully next month I'll have a couple more books to talk to you about, but until then, thank you so much for watching. Bye!